Welcome back, deep divers. Ready to explore something, well, a little unexpected.
Always up for a challenge. What's on the docket today?
We're diving into the U.S. university system. Well, a potential major shakeup, actually.
Oh, interesting. Higher education's always a hot topic.
Right. So imagine this. College in America. Tuition free.
Sounds pretty utopian, but I suspect there's a but coming.
Oh, definitely a but. There are some catches, and that's what we'll unpack today.
All right, I'm intrigued. Where are we getting this from? Some policy proposal.
A video essay, actually. It's, provocative, to say the least. And joining us to make sense of it all, an expert in global education trends.
Glad to be here. I'm always fascinated by how different countries approach education.
Perfect. So this video, it jumps right in, claiming Trump's 2016 win was in part due to his plan to change universities.
That's a bold claim. Was this a widely reported thing?
That's the thing. The video argues European media totally missed it. But for American voters, it was a game changer, apparently.
I'd need to see some evidence to back that up. Election coverage can be pretty selective, you know?
True. Always a good reminder to stay critical. But let's get into what this system actually looks like. The video creator describes Trump's vision as free tuition for all.
Sounds great on the surface. What's the catch?
Mandatory entrance and exit exams to make sure students are, actually learning.
That's where things get tricky. Free tuition is appealing, opens up access, but standardized tests are controversial.
Right, and there's another layer here. The video creator is really enthusiastic about the system curbing, as they put it, woke ideology.
So we're wading into the ideology and education debate. Woke is such a loaded term these days.
It really is. It's almost lost all meaning, honestly.
It's important to unpack these buzzwords and see what's really being said.
Totally. Back to the video, though. The creator argues the U.S. needs to adapt to compete with China and Russia. They talk about how fast everything's changing, especially with AI.
That's a key point. The skills needed for the future are evolving rapidly. It's not just about technical know-how anymore.
Right. They even compare the U.S. to Scotland, where a university is already free. Makes you wonder, why aren't more countries doing that?
Well, different countries have different priorities and resources. There's no one-size-fits-all model.
That's true. I guess there's no simple answer to how we should fund higher education.
Exactly. It's a complex issue with trade-offs, but it's a crucial conversation to have.
Absolutely. So listeners, have you ever considered how different education systems work around the world? Let us know your thoughts.
It's worth thinking about, right? I mean, the video essay we're discussing, it's just one viewpoint.
Right. What are some other perspectives on this, like about free tuition?
Well, some folks argue that free tuition, it could actually lead to lower quality education.
Yeah.
Less funding, maybe cutting corners.
Yeah, I could see that. Anything else?
Oh, yeah, definitely. The financial side, government budgets, they might be strained, especially if a ton more people enroll, right?
That makes sense. Funding's always a big issue. And going back to the video for a sec, the creator really pushes this idea that Trump's system, it kind of pushed back against what they call woke ideology,
Yeah, that's a loaded statement, for sure.
Mhm.
It kind of opens up this whole can of worms about, well, the role of ideology in education, period.
It does, doesn't it? Like what even IS woke in this
That's
context? I feel like everyone's got their own definition.
Exactly. It's such a slippery term. I mean, generally it's about being aware of social justice issues like, race, gender, inequality, those sorts of things.
Right. But sometimes it feels like it's used to shut down any conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. So how do we talk about this productively? It's tricky.
Yeah, it feels like everyone's just talking past each other these days.
It's tough, no doubt.
Yeah.
But I think acknowledging that there are real disagreements, that's a starting point. People have strong beliefs about this stuff.
Okay, makes sense.
Yeah.
But how do we actually have those conversations?
Well, first, maybe we got to get out our echo chambers, right? Actually listen to folks who disagree with us.
Easier said than done sometimes.
True, but important. And listening's key. Really trying to get WHY, someone holds a certain view.
Okay, shifting gears a bit, the video, it stresses this idea that America has to keep up with countries like China and Russia. Education's a big part of that, they say.
It's true. The global landscape of education is definitely changing fast.
Yeah, and they think this system, the free tuition, the tougher standards, that's the answer. What do you think?
Well, it's tough to say any one system's the right answer.
Mm,
The U.S. system's massive, complex.
yeah.
Any big changes, there's going to be a ripple effect.
Right. We can't just look at the surface. What about the consequences?
Exactly. We got to think about who's benefiting, who
Hmm.
might get left behind. It's got to be a careful process.
And the video talks about how with AI, everything's speeding up, generational shifts are happening so much faster. Is that really true?
It's pretty mind-blowing, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, things are moving at warp speed now. What used to take 10 years, it might only take like 6 months now.
Wow. So how does education even keep up with that?
That's the big question. We need to be adaptable, always learning. What we learned in school, it might be obsolete by next year. Yeah,
It's exciting, but kind of scary too, right? All this change.
definitely both. Big challenges, but huge opportunities too.
So back to this free tuition idea, stricter requirements. Is it like the magic solution?
Honestly, it's a mixed bag. Free college, that's amazing. More access for everyone. But the stricter side, like mandatory tests.
Yeah, the tests. The video's creator, they're really big on those.
I get the idea, wanting to make sure everyone's learning,
Yeah.
but those standardized tests, they can be really problematic.
How so?
Well, they don't always measure what they're supposed to.
Right.
And they can put certain students at a disadvantage, like if they don't have good resources or English isn't their first language.
So maybe tests aren't the best way to go about it.
Right. We need ways to assess learning that are fair
Mm.
and actually show what students can do, not just memorize stuff.
Makes sense. So if this video solution isn't perfect, what are some other options? What should we be thinking about?
That's the big question, right?
Right.
What do we want our education system to look like? What's important to us? And how do we make sure all students benefit?
Big questions for sure, but definitely worth thinking about. Yeah. It's a lot to unpack, that's for sure. But I think you've done a great job, like breaking it all down, making it understandable.
Well, I think it's important to remember that we don't have to have all the answers right now.
Right.
It's about asking the right questions, having those conversations, and, focusing on what we can do maybe in our own communities.
Absolutely. Small steps lead to bigger changes, right? And speaking of those big changes, the thing that really hit me in the video, it was how the creator talked about like how fast things are changing with AI.
Yeah, that whole thing about generational shifts happening way faster.
Yeah. They said what used to take a decade could now happen in like 6 months.
It's kind of crazy to think about.
Yeah.
It really does make you realize, like, we got to be flexible, always be learning.
Right. What we learned back in school, it might be totally useless now.
It's definitely a challenge.
Yeah.
But, it's exciting too, this whole new world, all these possibilities.
Yeah, there's definitely a sense of opportunity there. But okay, circling back to the video's main point, this whole idea of free tuition, stricter standards, the whole shebang, do you think it could actually work?
It's tough to say. I mean, the idea of making college affordable, maybe even free, it's great. Right?
Yeah, especially with all the debt people have.
Exactly. But we got to think about the consequences. Like, how do we pay for it? Would quality suffer? There are a lot of moving parts.
Right, and what about the stricter requirements, like all the testing? The creators seemed pretty sure that was the key.
Yeah, they were all about that. And I get it. You want to make sure students are actually learning.
Mm.
But those standardized tests, they don't always tell the whole story.
Yeah, you mentioned that before, how they can be unfair to some students.
Right. Like maybe students got a ton of potential, but they test poorly. We need to find better ways to assess what students really know and can do.
So not just teaching to the test, right?
Exactly. We need to think bigger than that.
Okay, so if this one solution isn't perfect, what are the answers? Where do we even begin?
It starts with asking the tough questions, like what kind of future are we preparing students FOR? What skills will they actually need?
Mm.
And then how do we build a system that helps them thrive?
That makes sense. It's not just about tweaking what we already have, it's about reimagining the whole thing.
Exactly. And it's not just up to educators or policymakers. It's on all of us, right? To think about what kind of world we want to create.
I love that, and I think that's a great place to leave it. So for all you deep divers out there, here's something to ponder. If this age of AI is changing everything, what skills, what knowledge will really matter? What can you do today to prepare? Keep asking those questions, keep learning, keep exploring. Thanks for joining us for another deep dive, and until next time, keep those minds curious.